Welcome to the Ultimate Farm Wife podcast. On this channel, we're going to be discussing all things marrying a farmer, moving to the land, and becoming integrated with a family farming operation. Whether you're moving to the farm for the first time or whether you're moving back into a family farming operation, we discuss the ins and the outs of all of it. So let's jump into today's episode.
Okay, listeners. So the intro today might sound a little bit different, and that's because it is. My name is Krista Paffrath. I am the CEO and founder of the Rural Podcast Network. And I'm so excited because Katja brought me on as the editor for season 9, and we had a blast. I had an absolute blast getting to know some of you and some of the past guests, and Katja asked me to interview her for season 10. So I'm thrilled to flip the tables and you all get to know Katja a little bit more, and we're going to dive right in. So go
Yeah.
ahead and introduce yourself, your family, and your farm.
Thank you to everyone who has been long-term and short-term listeners. Krista, thank you so much for interviewing me today for episode 100. I am so ecstatic to be here. I never thought that I would get to 100 episodes when I started the journey of this podcast. But I am a wife, a farm wife, a mum of 4 kids, 5 and under. So Eddie is 5, Mac is 4, Caroline is 2, and the newest baby, Aurora, is now 10 months, and that 10 months has flown. I live on the farm with my husband. I farm alongside him and his family farms. So we have 3 properties in total with just over 11,000 acres. On our home farm, we have stud shorthorns and the cropping, which mostly is lucerne on a center pivot irrigation system using B grey water, which is sewage effluent treated one grade below drinkable, and also open cropping mostly for self-farm use. On our western blocks, we have trade steers, our commercial shorthorn herd, and any other little side projects that we have running.
That's a lot. That's a lot going on. And here's the thing, Katja, and it doesn't matter. And I've seen this. So, for those of you, it's probably pretty obvious. I'm based here in the US in Arizona, and I edit podcasts all over the US, but I have clients in Canada and now Australia. But the one thing that stays the same that I've seen across the board for women in agriculture, and even more specifically, farm wives and ranch wives, is that your superpower is balancing it all. But it doesn't always mean balancing it with grace. Sometimes there's flubs, things get hard. So, how do you balance everything between motherhood and farm life?
Yeah, absolutely a great question, and definitely one of the founding questions for all my other episodes that I have done on the podcast. So for me, it depends on the season for life. When it was just Ned and myself on farm and we were newly dating and then newly wedded, it looked like having, trying to have one day off a fortnight, whether that was with sport or a date night or something like that. Now that we've grown the farming properties and we've grown our family from just the 2 of us to a family of 6, it does look very different. It might look like I will try and get, 1 to 2 hours on a Sunday just to myself. I'm a complete water baby, which is so unusual being out in Western New South Wales in Australia because it's very dry here. We're not near the ocean or anything like that. So I would get my points of contact either by going to the local pool because I'm not sold on swimming in the dams or the rivers, or I will run a nice hot bath and have a book that I will read and just sit there until it basically goes cold or until the family returns back to the house. And that's enough to refill my cup. And then other times it's, a stolen 10 or 15 minutes where Ned and I will just sit down and have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, whether that's with the kids or with ourselves. We are big gardeners on top of everything else. So we have an orchard and some veggie gardens and some greenhouse. So sometimes it's literally 10 minutes just sitting out there looking and planning and dreaming. That's something different to the family farming business to be able to focus on and think of, and something that you can make decisions yourself on. It's not dependent on other people. So that really helps in keeping balance and alignment and everybody happy, because the farms are so busy and it's just the four of us. Occasionally we'll bring contractors in for haymaking or silage or digging out dams and those sorts of things. But predominantly it's just the four of us on farm. And that makes days really busy. And for me, it's a little bit easier to prioritize family life balance because I am the primary carer, and that was a decision that Ned and I made together, not only on circumstance, but also because of knowledge gaps. So I came from a sheep farming background, but I've come into a cattle and cropping farm. So the fast pace of the businesses didn't allow, or has still hasn't allowed, a lot of knowledge gaps to be put in. So there are still tasks that Ned will have to do, and quite often people will ask me questions, and I will just have to say that's a Ned question because I don't know. And I try and write those down to make sure we come back to those, because if something does happen, like we've found out in a few of our past interviews, those are really important questions, and I probably should know those. So when I go to pick up the kids from school, now that they're school age, those moments in the car can be taken into that balance as well. I usually have both girls. So my two youngest are home with me all the time. So usually we will do some karaoke or something like that on the way into town. Or if they fall asleep because it's quite a drive, then I might call someone and catch up with someone, and that also balances out and fills my cup. But then when we get home to the farm in the afternoons, it's full on into chores and jobs and wherever Ned's up to. So quite often, he's gone early in the morning and he's not back till 10 o'clock at night. So if we need to go see him, sometimes that balance is taking lunch and meals out to the paddock, to wherever he is, whether he's, driving tractors or fixing troughs or doing some yard work. So that all balances out as well, because that is family time, and we're very lucky in agriculture and farming that that's very flexible, that we can just go see Dad down the paddock when he's at the home block. It's a little bit harder when they're at the western blocks, but that's kind of what balance looks like for us. I mean, a lot of people look at that and say that's a lot of hard work, you're not stopping, but it works well for us. We've found what fills that cup up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important to find. Like you said, every operation is different, every couple is different, every family is different, and everybody has different needs. So, however you can do that and do it successfully, I think is a win. But something that you touched on at the very beginning was you said it depends on what season I'm in.
Mm,
And I think so often, and even in my work, the women that I talk to, often they have a hard time even realizing what season they are in, or that there's been a shift in seasons for them. Because what works at one point in your life doesn't always work later. So, can you maybe give your listeners some like tips, or like what do you do in addition to the balance, but how do you take time to sit back and like reflect on what season you're truly in and like
mm.
what you need? Like, does that look like quiet time for you? Is it that time when you're sitting in the tub? How can women recognize what season they're in and shift accordingly?
Yeah, such an important question. I think for me, it's a little bit easier to identify that things have changed because I was on farm before we had kids and before we got married. So I went from a very hands-on in the paddock all day, every day, very much part of not the decision making, but very much part of moving the needle forward outside in the paddock. And that didn't change in really my first or second pregnancy and introducing the boys to the farm, because they just came with me everywhere. We're in the middle of the drought, and every day looked like pretty much the same on repeat. So we would get up early in the morning and we would drought feed, and then we would do like a water run if anything needed water. And then, we'd do that on the home block, and then we'd head out and do that on the western blocks. And so that was a really tough introduction to being a mum and being on farm. But at the same time, I knew when I needed to be out of the house. I knew what jobs I needed to do. I knew how long they would take. And because it was quite hard having two young kids. I mean, he was day 5 postpartum, and he was on the bike with me mustering day 7. He was in the feed ute with me. So, and then Mac came along. So I would have Eddie on my back and Mac on my front. And it got too hard, and I could feel myself heading for burnout, and I knew I needed support in different areas that weren't being provided on farm. So I went and got a counselor. I've been with the same counselor since, so nearly 6 years with the same counselor. And I think I'm quite a reflective person by nature, and I do that at the end of the day, but also during the day when I'm doing monotonous tasks that don't need too much brain power. I always like to reflect on how something could have been done better, or how we're going to prep for something in the future that would make something easier. Okay, we had a miscommunication on that. How do we be clearer in communicating that? And I think between the introduction and the change in season with the kids on the farm, and being able to acknowledge that what I was doing was too hard, like I would leave at the same time as my husband every morning and get back really late at night, and then have to prep and set us up for success the next morning. So more kids in the mix helped with that, because something had to change, something had to give. We would be getting home late at night, and it'd be like 10 o'clock, and I don't want to cook dinner at 10 o'clock, but I'm hungry, Ned's hungry, the kids are hungry. Like, we needed to start I needed to start taking a step back, and I knew that would be really hard and that would be really difficult, because I had a lot of guilt and a lot of anxiety from not being in the paddock with them every day, because that's what we'd always dreamed and talked about doing, and we had done it for so many years before we got married and had the kids. So having a counselor helps identify those changes. Doing self-reflection does that, but also hitting your capacity and saying something has to change, something has to give. We're quite clearly in that different season. And sometimes, what we've tried to implement, it may work for 3 months, it may work for 6 months. But when you then hit the show circuit, so winter for a lot of farmers that I know is their quiet period. For us, it's not. We have so many show circuits that we go on. So we go and take bulls to country shows. I judge country shows. Ned judges country shows. The kids are now of the age where they are showing in heifer shows. We've been long time supporters and sponsors of heifer shows. So that takes a lot up. And that same season is also bull sale season. So we've got an on-property bull sale, but we also go to a lot of on-property bull sales to purchase in genetics that's going to get us through, our next however many breeding programs we are focusing on at the time. It's a lot. And so we don't have a quiet period, but I have learnt to book the holiday as well. So joining the season of life with the balance. Now that I've been on farm for over 11 years, I know that things don't quieten down. I know that we don't really have a quiet period, but usually off the end of, fire season, somewhere in either January or February, we will get off farm for a little bit. And we're lucky enough to be able to do that because we divide and conquer the farm when we do that. So Ned's parents will stay on farm and we'll go away, and then we'll switch. So yeah, identifying the season you're in and accepting that things are going to be different and things are going to be hard, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. I mean, that was a takeaway that I took away from my first interview with Courtney Tell way back in the day when I started the podcast. And it's so true.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think too, like you said, I think just being reflective constantly almost and just
Yeah.
checking in with yourself. Like I do it all the time is my capacity changes, day to day, hour to hour. So, just being real with what you can and can't handle and then asking for help when you need it is great.
Yeah.
So the next question, and I feel like there's a lot of pieces that you've already touched on that might play into this question, but what is your secret to keeping your identity while being a farm wife and mom?
So important. Identity is really interesting because we go through lots of different flows in identity when we move to the farm. So, particularly if you're not keeping your corporate or town job when you do so, or when you're moving from the role in your family farm to your husband or partner's family farm, that is a big shift because quite often we identify who we are for the career that we choose. And that's how society often, will try and identify you, put you in a box. Everyone sort of feels like they need to be in a box and they need to have a label. And so it is a big identity shift when you move to the farm, especially if you're stepping away from those careers. And we joke that we wear many hats and that we have many labels and many identities. And I think it's working out what fills our cup and what makes us happy. So recently, someone was saying, oh, we quite often focus on what triggers us. So what makes us unhappy? And we focus on that, or what's something that we could make better because that wasn't very nice experience. But I think when we're on farm, we have to search for the glimmers in the day, and those glimmers are what makes us happy. And usually, if we follow the path of what makes us happy, then we soon find out what hobbies we like, what roles we like on the farm, whether we are enjoying parenthood or not. Not everybody has a smooth sailing into parenthood or even into, the teenage years. Every level of raising kids, especially on farm and in alignment with the farm, is going to be really different. So yeah, identity is hard. And I think when we try to keep it the same, and when we try to just be the same person we were before we moved on farm, that's when it gets really hard. I think for me, I was a reader for such a long time, and when I moved on farm, I moved away from it. One of the biggest things that I've found that makes me happy and that I identify with now is yes, I'm a reader. And yes, even if I'm making only 10 minutes a day to read, that's still part of my identity. That's still part of what makes me happy. Same as the gardening and things like that. So definitely, if you're trying to think about, well, who am I now? And you're going through those changes of seasons and you're going through moving to the farm, I think finding out what makes you happy will help with that, help identify who you are. Write down all the roles and jobs that you do. So at the 2025 Harvest Her Power conference, I ran a course. My workshop was called Know Your Timings on Farm. And one of those tasks was writing down everything that you do, not only in the day, but also in the week, or think about a busy season like harvest or cropping or carving, and really write down those roles. And that is your identity. That is part of your role on the farm. That is part of who you are, because who you are is what you're doing and what you're working towards. And that's where hobbies and things come in as well. So many of the ladies said, I didn't realize that I was part of the family farming business. I didn't realize that I was actually an essential part of the farm. But when they wrote down what it was that they did, they realized that there's that interconnection with the farm, that what they do have is important. And they said that gave them a bigger sense of achievement. They felt less guilty. They also felt like they were really starting to come up with a clearer picture of who they were identity wise and where they fit in the family farming business.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important to sit down and do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going a little bit off script here because I just got back from a conference myself literally this last weekend, and I was thrilled to be able to sit in a room and talk with women, but you would maybe, I mean, and you wouldn't be shocked, but it's crazy that it's coming up in this conversation. But so many women were talking to me about, well, I just deleted my LinkedIn or I deleted my Instagram because I felt like I needed a title and I do
Mhm.
so many things and nothing feels like it fits. Like, who am I and why doesn't this title feel like me? You
Yeah.
know, and I told this gal that was sitting there, I'm like you don't need a title. Like you are all of the titles. You are all of the things that make you you. And I think the idea that, like you said, the idea that we all have to fit in a box is wild. Like
Yeah.
it's absolutely crazy. So yeah, I definitely feel you that you are what you do and you are what your passions are. So I love that.
Yeah. And platforms like that, I mean, so many people still ask me what I do and who I am on the platforms. Like they're like, "Oh, you're doing some really interesting stuff, but I don't know who you are or what you do." And I'm like, that's kind of the point. Like the point is we are not just one thing. I had someone call up and ask me about a speaking engagement. So they said, "Oh, you were recommended. This is what it's about." But I've looked at your social accounts and I don't know who you are and what you do. Do you fit the mold?
Hate
And in
that.
that case, I said, no, I don't
Yeah.
fit the mold because you're looking for a very specific person who's going to talk about a very specific topic. And I said that topic's not exactly in my wheelhouse because this is all the things that I do. And I listed out the podcasts and the farm and being a mum and the conference and, all the other side projects that I have going on. And I said, unless we can talk about fitting that into the very specific thing that you're wanting to do, perhaps I'm not the person for you. But in other speaking arrangements and things like that, they will look at my page, and they will look at my website and they will go, yes, yeah,
Yeah, it's absolutely wild. So, ladies, break the mold. Don't be afraid
break
to
them
break the
all.
mold. Yes.
Wear all the hats.
Yeah, wear all the hats. I know. If I could scream that from the rooftops, I've been recently just so passionate about that because I'm in the same boat. But speaking of doing all of the things, it also comes up that like when we're, having a podcast, we are putting on events, we are still managing the house and the farm and the family and all of the things. Those things require boundaries.
Yeah.
So, what advice, and maybe this is a twofold question. So, A, how do you manage your own boundaries around doing all the things and knowing what gets priority and when? Because we have deadlines too, right, that have to be met. And then, what is your advice for women also around setting boundaries for the priorities in their life?
I love boundaries. Boundaries is one of my biggest topics that I talk about. And at the conference in February for 2026, my workshop is on setting boundaries to prevent burnout for rural women. It is so important. It is something that I think we all need to do better. And that includes myself because earlier this year, so in May 2025, I hit absolute burnout and it resulted in 2 nights and 3 days in ED in Dubbo, where I was too unstable to move. I had stroke like symptoms. So, boundaries is really interesting because I am someone who believes that I do hold boundaries quite strongly, and I've had to learn to do that, particularly with growing my family and the changing in roles on the farm. But sometimes we let them go, and there's real consequences for letting go of those boundaries. So we live and we learn. I think boundaries also depends on your organization style. So we'll start with organization and then we'll go into holding personal boundaries. So organization wise, I love planning 12 months, 2 years in advance and putting it on the calendar. So if I know that we have something large coming up, so Beef Week in Rockhampton is a big, big event in Australia, up in Queensland, and we take bulls there we know that that's coming up in another 2 years' time. So instead of just running one calendar, I will run a couple of calendars. I am a paper person for some reason. It could be my dyslexia, but as soon as I put it into my phone, it's out of sight, out of mind, and I cannot plan like that. It needs to be on paper. It needs to be on the calendar. If you're a big wall calendar with the 12 months and that works for you, that's fantastic as well. For me, it's just just a paper calendar with big squares on it, and it shows a month at a time, and I'm happy to flick through in that. So I start by putting all of those on the calendar. And this kind of sounds like time management, but it sort of goes together with setting the boundaries. So I'll start with the big picture and move into the details. So anything big that I know is happening, any of the show circuit, any of the sales, they're all roughly around the same dates every year. So even if we don't know their specific date for 2 years, 3 years time, we can still add them to the month of the calendar. So we know what we're working at when we look at it. When the official dates are announced, usually 12 months in advance, then we can correct that and pop it into its place. And then when we move into seasons, so we know that we might not know exactly when harvest is going to start, but we know roughly when we get it started every year. So we're adding that to the calendar. Once we've got our 12 months, 6 months, 3 months monthly plan done up with all the big things in, then it's really important to work out rest periods and actually adding those on the calendar. So if you put on leave blank on your calendar, the farm is probably going to still be doing their own thing, and feeding runs will still happen in the morning. But unless you're leaving things blank to, not go to a party or to not put a big job on that day, then that's factoring in rest into your calendar. And that's a boundary that's really hard to hold, because usually in the couple of days in the lead up to that, it's going to be, something will break down, a machine or something will break down. And sometimes in those periods, we do need to divide and conquer. But if you need rest, if you feel like you're heading towards burnout, put it on the calendar. Probably put it on the calendar anyway and make it good health practices, because it's going to be easier to do and respect when it's written down, when it's on the calendar. When it comes to interpersonal relationships, particularly because we all know that not everyone gets along on farm, and that's okay. It makes it hard. It makes it difficult. It can be really sad that you don't have those strong connections and relationships that you want or that you've dreamt about when you first moved to the farm. And I say it's okay too, because there's ways to work around that through boundary setting. So if you know that there is someone on farm who belittles you, calls you names, has no respect for you, then first and foremost, raise it with them. Do they understand the behavior that they have? If things can't improve from that communication, some people are just who they are. And if they're not going to change the way they address you, then the farm is a great big place, and there's lots of cogs and lots of movement that you can do where you don't have to put up with that and you don't have to be around that person. So whether that's your husband going to the morning meetings and then sub-delegating tasks to you, or whether that's you writing down on your calendar and saying, right, we've got fencing coming up in a couple of weeks. I will go pick up the fence equipment's in at the dealership. I will go pick up the fencing equipment. Or, okay, everybody's mustering today, but I know that the fire unit needs to be serviced. So I have written down everything that needs to be done in the service for that fire unit. I'll go over to the shed, check, have we got it? No, we haven't. I'll order it and go pick it up. Those sorts of things. Or, roughly when lamb marking and calf marking and weaning's going to be on. So do we have all of that stuff in the lead up? That can be stuff that you can do by yourself from a list that you and your husband or you and your partner have put together, and you can go and take yourself off and do that. In most family farming businesses, they will have accounts at businesses that they frequent. So you're not even needing a bank card. You can just pop it on the account. Some family farming businesses still use a checkbook. So if you can get some checks pre-signed by whoever it is in that family farming business who can approve that, whether it's your husband, whether it's you and your husband, whether it's his parents, and then you can go in and pay for those with the checks. In businesses, they don't have accounts. There's lots of different roles and ways to still be part of the family farming business and still avoid those people that you have those conflicts with. It's going to benefit your mental health and your relationship with your husband tenfold if you can avoid people like that in the family farming business. So that could be, we could be talking about contractors, in-laws, that type of thing. If it is contractors and there are, not only just yourself having issues with them, but if it starts to come out that there's more people, they could be the best at their job, but they're probably not going to suit your family farming business. So it's sitting down and talking about whether you're going to look at other contractors to fill that, because if you're the only person on farm that day and they have to turn up, that's not going to be a great working relationship, and that's not going to have efficiencies that you need for that family farming business to move forward. And that's hard conversations to have, because you don't want to be the person who is the spine in people's thorn, or who has issue with something that everybody else seems fine, or it's always been done that way. But speaking up in the first and foremost, and then working out how you're going to protect yourself from that in the future as well, particularly when it's around safety and contractors and that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So important. And as you were kind of talking, the thoughts, what kind of kept coming to mind was just say no. Like, you don't have to say yes to everything. If people ask you to go out or, get involved or volunteer, I know a lot of times, we're asking to be on boards or committees or, whatever the case may be. Like, saying no is so simple, but so hard.
Yeah, no was really hard to learn when I first moved to the farm. I'm definitely a people person, a people pleaser even. So no was really hard. And I still find no really hard right now. But what I found to be a softer response that still set the boundary that I was much easier in implementing is not right now.
Mm.
So if I am being given a last minute job or a job that morning and I'm looking at my day and I just think I cannot fit this in around the feed runs and my other jobs and the school run and everything else, I can say, I can do that job, but not right now. I can do that job on another day. I can do it, but it's not going to look like the way that you want to do it, because I will have the kids with me. The kids are always with me. I will have the kids with me. And so I will need to do it this way, or I will need to come back and do that when I don't have the kids with me once they've gone down to bed or something like that, or I've found someone else to have them. Because, it's unsafe to do so, or, we're in the middle of toilet training at the moment. So that sometimes puts a spindle in things. If it's the middle of winter and for some reason they all get soaking wet in the rain, I can quite often use that. Yes, I can do that, but first I need to do X, Y, and Z to make sure the kids are good, to make sure the rest of the farm is running smoothly, to make sure I'm doing the rest of the jobs on my job list without running around like a headless chook. I do like to have a day planned. I'm not someone who can just put my nose to the ground and go this thing, that thing. I sort of need my list. I need to visualize my list. I need to plan and prep for my list and then action it. And that's a very different work style to even my husband. And so over the time, we've had to communicate quite clearly about boundaries and about saying no, or not right now, or yes, but it's going to look like this. I'm not as strong as the other people on the farm as well. So a lot of the time, I need to do the feed run in smaller bags, or I need to have assistance pulling things up. And I mean, if you have 4 kids in 5 years, then, your core is not going to be the way that it used to be, or the way that most people have a core. And that takes time to build up, and that's okay as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tickets are now on sale for the Harvest Her Power Empowerment and Skills Conference. right here at the Taronga Western Plains Zoo in Dubbo, New South Wales, on February 23rd and 24th of 2026. Purchase your tickets in the link below, and I look forward to seeing you there. This conference is for all women in agriculture involved in family farming businesses, no matter your role, no matter what stage of the journey you're on. This conference is for you. I'll see you there.
You touched on this too when you were talking about boundaries, and I want to go back to it, but you, and not even just with family, but with contractors and with people coming in and out, that's a lot of personalities that you're balancing, like in one day, in one week, in one month. Is there anything special that you do to help balance all of those personalities? And how do you, because I think it takes holding space. Like you have to hold space for yourself and you have to hold space for them. But how do you balance those personalities?
Yeah, great question. I am a very approachable person, so I will always go up and introduce myself. Even when I was new on the farm, if someone came out, I would always take the time to go and say hello and introduce myself and have a quick chat with them. And, some people you'll get a vibe straight away with, and other times you'll get along really well with them until you're the person who's been given the hat of in charge of that project. And as soon as you try to take the lead on that project or that job, all of a sudden they're not the best person that you used to chat with, and they've got an issue with female authority or a younger person or something like that. And in those cases, I used to take that really personally, and I used to be really upset about that. And, when people say, oh, you've got to grow a thicker skin, I didn't think that was helpful, that term, because what does that mean? And so it's only now that I've been on farm, for quite some time dealing with those mixed personalities where it's like, okay, so that person's personality and the way that they treat me actually has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with them. And even that change in mindset has helped a lot. So either now I can be like, mate, do the job. You've been employed to do the job. This is the way it's going to be done. You can do that, or you cannot accept the contract. And that's okay in some circumstances. And if it's not, then I can say, okay, well, wait here, and I'll go and get my husband and have a chat to him about it. You've got to have that communication with them first, and then treat it like a little bit like a job, I guess, and take it to the next level up, which would, well, not even level up, but to somebody else to get the same sort of outcome. So I'd say to my husband, we spoke about doing this job this way. We need it to be done this way because that's what's legal, that's what's safe. They're not doing that. I've broached it with them, and they pretty much told me to go get. So then it's not a me problem, it's not me personally. So then that's up to Ned to go and talk to them about that. And if they still refuse to do the job safely, or they still refuse to be respectful on your place, your farm, with your rules and guidelines, then you escort them straight off the place. They're not worth dealing with anymore. And we haven't had to do that too often. A lot of the time it's just switching up that dynamic. So even if I'm leading a project or leading a job on farm, sometimes you've just got to change the face of who talks to that contractor to get the job done as well. And so I will write down on my bookkeeping questions when I'm doing the books for the farm, and I will give them to Ned, and he will have to make the phone call because I'm in those situations, I'm still treated, and I know many, many are, as just the daughter-in-law. And that's really difficult when it comes to the business side of it, or the skills that you have that you're bringing to the farm, and the knowledge that you have that you're bringing to the farm. And it goes back to that identity. Like, I'm not just the farmer's daughter, or I'm not just the farm wife. Like, I'm Katja, and these are my skills, and these are my role in the farm. But yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons is learning that harder skin is to learn that that's other people's issues, that's their traits, it's not you. And to learn how to not take that personally, and how do you reframe that in your mind to make sure that that you're doing the best that you can in your role, and setting those boundaries mentally and physically to make sure that you're not dealing with people like that if they're going to make an issue with you that's not an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked a lot about your background on the farm, your life on the farm, and I want to pivot the conversation a little bit. So, with all of this wisdom and all of these stories and the advice, I'm really curious, like, what drew you to starting the Ultimate Farm Wife? Because it's more than a podcast. You
Mm.
have an entire community, and now you're planning a conference. Like, there's so many things that have stemmed from this. What was that initial spark? Like, what was that initial drive for wanting to start this?
I think the initial thought process was definitely along the lines of I've come from a farming background and I'm having some difficulties transitioning into my new identity and my new roles on another farm. So even though I had a lot of skills and a lot of experience that transferred beautifully and have been great pillars of help throughout the years, I thought, imagine if you are going from no farming background at all to being on a farm to integrating into a family farming business, or even that next step of integrating back into a family farming business so that you've started, you've grown up on the farm, you've grown up with your parents, but now you want to be taken a little bit serious in coming back to the farm and not just working for mum and dad, but working with mum and dad. And some of the problem solving that it is definitely needed around that. So initially I started as just an Instagram page and it grew from there. So I started a YouTube channel just doing, how-tos and planning and follow me's and decluttering and that sort of thing, which has now taken a little bit of a back step because one of the ladies said, who has been a long-term listener, still listens, so shout out to Sally, you should start a podcast. And I was like, oh, I listen to podcasts like when we're in the tractor or in the car or cleaning the house and things, but I'd never thought of taking that next step and doing podcasts. So I started podcasting, started creating this wealth of knowledge for this platform, for resources for anyone, no matter what part of the family farming journey they're on to. So started a private community page where anyone can ask any hard questions or follow-up questions from any of the episodes. Yeah, then after COVID, a lot of people were reaching out and wanting that further connection and that networks. Like they thought that they had the support that they needed on farm, but realized that a lot of their network just didn't understand the problem solving we've got to do and why things are the way they are and why they need to be done the same way and why dad can't be in for dinner and bath routine every night, that sort of thing, depending on the setup and the business. So yeah, then the conference was born out of that, and I have been writing a book, but I made a really rookie mistake and I saved it on my OneDrive, and my OneDrive crashed and deleted the other day. So I've got to restart writing that book, but it's a passion that turned out to I need to find my community and I need to find and help others. If I could just help one person integrate a little bit easier, then that was my goal. And here we are at 100 episodes and a conference and, starting to rewrite that book so that, it can be given to friends and family who are integrating into the family farming business or back into the family farming business with those helpful tips, tricks, hacks, and advice that have been given in the podcast in all 100 episodes and more into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. And reflecting back on 100 episodes, what, if you can, are a couple of stories or a couple of moments for you, whether it was guests, again, whether it was just kind of like that relatable moment where you're like, oh, this is hitting the mark. This is impacting the rural women that I want it to. What were some of those big moments for you in the last 100 episodes?
I don't think I've had an interview where I haven't taken something away from, or where I think, oh my goodness, like we might be in different parts of ag, we might be in different parts of the industry, particularly when you can, like, it's like comparing apples to oranges with dairy farming and cropping and mixed farming and livestock. Our farms and our families operate so different, but there is a gem, at least a gem in every single episode, and I've absolutely loved all of that. I think for personal recommendations, I think everyone's just going to have to jump in my DM over on socials or send me an email because I think the interviews that I would recommend are definitely specific to what they're having issues with on farm.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to hear something on a specific topic, make sure to reach out and Katja will give you those recommendations personally.
Yeah.
So speaking more to those women, what is something that you wish more women in agriculture knew about themselves?
You are more capable than you can ever imagine. You can live this life, you can adapt to it, you can thrive. You don't just have to be surviving. Find your community, find your network, ask the questions. And just because something has always been done one way doesn't mean that it needs to be done now that you're in the picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And something, again, I mentioned this conference, I'm just full of these little like nuggets of my own, but also you can't get somewhere if you don't take the first step.
Yeah.
And you can't get more knowledge on something and you can't change if you don't make the decision to change. You have to take the first step. You have to take action first, and then
Yeah.
clarity will follow. So,
Yeah. Every task is just taking the first step and working on it from there. You don't have to see the top of the staircase to know that you need to take the first steps if you're going to have any idea on where it's going to take you and how you're going to achieve a job. Just yeah, take the steps. And also back yourself sort of goes into that as well because there are so many people in our who we think are our support networks who will tell you no and tell you 100 million reasons why you can't do it, but you don't even need a reason why you can. Just start
yeah,
because time is our asset and our teacher. And we just take little steps, learn, little steps, learn. You can do it. If you want to do it or you need to do it, absolutely back yourself.
yeah, absolutely. And kind of, excuse me, kind of along the same lines, how can farm wives feel more confident in their role on and off the farm?
I think that comes down to knowing where you fit and where you fit right now. So, not where you need to be, but where you fit right now. And knowing that that's good enough, knowing that your farmer has asked you to be part of his life and to be part of his farm. And he did that before you were on farm and before he knew where life was going to take you guys. And that is enough as well because you are who you are, and they saw that, and they saw your potential, and they saw what you brought to the table, and have confidence in that and let that guide you. No one's asking you to change. Well, hopefully they're not asking you to change. So I think that's the first place I would start is in that relationship and in that connection. And then in being on the farm and your role in the family farming business, take it one step at a time, write things down, keep track of what you're doing, what you're being asked to do, your skill set, reflect on that. And when you've achieved things, little or small, on the farm, like you start your first generator or you work the crush for the first time, and even if you let one or two through, like celebrate the fact that you did that for the first time, and that's a big thing. And that's something that's learning. If you've changed a tire for the first time by yourself, celebrate it and use those little wins to compel you forward because they are all something that you've had to learn to do and you've now achieved. And it's the little wins that are going to get you through each and every day, and especially during the hard times.
Yeah, Absolutely. So we're coming up on an hour here, and I think we'll probably start to wrap up here. But I'm dying to know what is something that you wish you had known 11 years ago? Like when you first joined the family farm and you first started taking on this role. Like, what is something that you wish that you could tell you 11 years ago?
It's okay to say no. It's okay to say no. I wish that I knew what was meant by grow a thicker skin. I wish that I set some boundaries earlier and more often. And I wish that sometimes I didn't feel alone in it because I knew that I couldn't be the only person who was having to problem solve and balance and work this out. I knew that I couldn't possibly have been, but that doesn't make those days and those nights really hard. So join the community, get involved, ask the tough questions. Someone else will be feeling it. And by giving voice to those questions, those problems, those fears, what it is that we're really struggling, it takes the power away from them. And even if the feedback is given to you that may not be 100% helpful for your exact situation, try and find those nuggets or ask follow-up questions or give more context. And together we can all join together in creating that support system and answering those questions. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And community, you're always stronger with other people. You are always stronger. I just, again, these little nuggets. I talked about root systems earlier, and roots are stronger when they have a system, when
Yeah.
they are joined with others. So definitely, definitely find others to find your support in. And Katja, we are in season 10 of
Yeah.
the podcast, and you have a conference coming up. What is next? What can listeners expect in the future of the Ultimate Farm Wife?
I think the first important takeaway to be is if you are not a subscriber to the newsletter, you need to get on that because that is where we announce anything coming up. You'll be the first to know of any changes. If you're on the fence about attending the conference, grab your ticket, listen to the other episodes of season 10. They are all from past participants of the first conference who are coming back either as speakers, workshop hosts, panelists, or who are just turning up for another year because they came and got so much out of it.
Where's the Ultimate Farm Wife headed?
Podcasts are free to listen to, but they are not free to make. So if you are wanting to hear more seasons through, season 11 and beyond, then we really do need a season sponsor to come on and pay for those episodes to come up. I have been a passionate podcaster now for 3 years, and I've had some great collaborations and partnerships, but I would really like to lock in a season sponsor. So put your feelers out for me, please, and help me get those on board so we can continue doing this because I love it and I love you all. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always like to end my interviews, whether a podcast or I also do a magazine, but I always like to ask, Katja, is there anything else that you want to share with your listeners or that you want to end on?
So quite often I will get asked if I'm the ultimate farm wife. And is that why the podcast and what I'm working towards with my other projects is called The Ultimate Farm Wife? And I like to think it's more of a collection of resources and stories and advice that is helping us all become the ultimate farm wife and all band together in support for working out how we're going to get there. And I think even just starting on the journey of integrating into or back into a family farming business means that we should wear the title, the ultimate farm wife, because we do so much and we are involved in so much and we wear so many hats. And we really are the backbone of family farming. And we are the glue that holds those farms together, and to never underestimate our importance, because we only have to leave the farm for an afternoon or an overnight trip or whatever it is. And how many phone calls do you get, and how many things aren't done when you get home? Like, we really need to give ourselves a big round of applause and really understand how important that we are, and that we are the ultimate farm wives.
And what a great note to end on. So, Katja, thank you so much for letting me come on and have this conversation with you. I'm thrilled to be a part of season 10 and play a very small role in helping this be what it is. So, thank you so much. And listeners, make sure to leave a review and follow on Instagram and YouTube and all of the places to help support the Ultimate Farm Wife.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on and being part of this team, Krista.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Ultimate Farm Wife podcast. A huge thank you goes out to our show editor, Krista Pathrath, CEO of the Rural Podcasting Network, helping rural entrepreneurs share their voice online. You can learn more about Krista and the Rural Podcasting Co. at their website in the show notes below. And to our creative powerhouse, Dakota Gorey, CEO, or as she likes to call it, the Creative Experience Officer of CGC Design. With over 5 years of experience in marketing, social media management, and website design, Dakota is passionate about helping businesses and brands of all sizes find their voice and stand out online. And Lou and her team at the administration agency, and of course to yourselves who tune in every week. Want to know more about her work or about Krista and how you can get involved? Make sure you're using the links in the show notes below. I'm Katja Williams, and this has been the Ultimate Farm Wife podcast. Until next time, take care, be kind, and keep showing up for your farm, your family, and yourself. I'll see you in another episode. Before you go, if you've been loving these farm life chats, I'd love for you to join me over on my other podcast too. It's called Agsolutley Fabulous, where we dive into agriculture beyond the headlines and bridging the urban-rural divide. We'll deep dive into big conversations in ag, from the challenges to the highlights and what's shaping our future. It's a space where honest stories, laughter, and a good dose of farm life real talk goes on. So make sure to head to the link in the show notes, subscribe to the Agsolutley Fabulous, and I'll play the intro for you now.
Hi, welcome to Agsolutley Fabulous. My name is Gillian Fennell, also known as Station Mum 101. I love everything about agriculture, especially the people, and especially communicating about what makes Australian ag so special.
And I'm Katja Williams, a beef, cattle and cropping farmer, and I love all things ag, and I'm also known as the Ultimate Farm Wife. Together, we are Agsolutley Fabulous, and we are talking all things agriculture beyond the headlines.
And we can't wait to give our opinion to you, and we hope you enjoy it.